Jim Collison here at the Heartland Developer Conference in Omaha 2014, and we are here with Joel Kauffman. And Joel, welcome. Good to have you back.
Thank you.
Again. Yeah, let's shake hands over there. Joel, I interviewed you a year ago, and so welcome back to it. Tell us again, though, who you are, where you're from, what you do, those kinds of necessary vitals.
Joel Kauffman. I'm the lead developer for a web development shop in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, by the name of Vistacom, and we do mostly websites and web applications for ag companies, co-ops, seed companies, that sort of thing.
If you're here in the Midwest, you got to work on ag.
Yeah,
that's for sure. You know, which is interesting in itself, because sometimes we think of ag as maybe other people outside of the Midwest think of ag as kind of low tech.
Right.
But there's a lot of tech in ag.
There's
now,
a lot of tech.
Right.
They're getting to the point where they don't even have to drive the tractors anymore.
It's kind of crazy, all GPS driven, and
yeah.
So what kind of stuff? Tell me what kind of projects do you guys work on?
Sure. So we, like I said, mostly websites, public-facing websites for co-ops. That sort of thing. So
what brings you here to the conference? What are you speaking about different this year than last?
Sure.
What are you speaking on this year?
So this year I was talking about Nancy, sort of an introductory.
So explain that a little bit for the average guy who doesn't know.
Well, Nancy is a .NET version of a Ruby library called Sinatra.
Okay.
It's an alternative web framework. So if you're in the Ruby world, you're mostly familiar with Ruby on Rails.
Right.
Sinatra is an alternative to Rails.
Okay.
If you're in .NET, it's ASP.NET.
Okay.
Nancy is an alternative.
So what does it give you? What's the advantage it gives you?
So the advantage of Nancy is that it's very lightweight, low friction, runs anywhere.
Okay.
Runs on Raspberry Pi.
Really?
Yep.
That lightweight?
Yep.
Huh? Okay. Do you have a Pi?
I do not.
You do not. Why not? They're like $35.
I know.
You should. They're cheap. A friend said, "How come I didn't have one?" And I said, "Because I need to learn something new."
Right.
Like I need a hole in my head, right? It's one of those. It's one more of those things to do.
Yeah.
Right. And so, what were you hoping to? Was it just a strict demo, or what were you hoping to get across?
Well, it's just an intro. So highlights, basic usage, sort of how do you get started?
Yeah. What's the average? So the average listener that's coming to, do they generally come with some knowledge and are looking for more, or is this like they're wanting to check out something new because they're trying to solve a problem? And what's that problem?
Sure, and hopefully for this one they're looking for something new.
Okay.
Just that maybe they've heard about it, don't know what it is, they're interested in seeing.
Yeah. So if I'm a .NET guy and I want to take advantage of some of this functionality that maybe in Ruby with I can then just use Nancy, right, and use that framework to kind of make that work.
Yep.
What kind of questions do you get typically? So you do your session demo, walk people through it, and let me ask: is it a free model, freemium? Do you what's the structure work to use
open
this?
Source.
Completely. It's .NET and it's open source.
Yep.
Is that even possible, or
completely possible?
Joking.
Most of .NET is open source now.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's really headed that way.
Yeah.
For sure. But so completely open source, so they can just go out and implement it. And so, what kind of questions do you normally get?
Questions are usually like, so what's it good for, right? And the answer is that it's low ceremony.
No, what is that? Okay.
So there's not a lot of code that you write to get the framework to work.
Got it.
Instead, you can just write your code.
Okay.
Now, the trade-offs with that are that, like the full ASP.NET framework does many things. Nancy's a little more focused just on sort of serving web pages, API endpoints, that sort of thing.
Okay. Can you give me a specific example of how, like, and you can remove the names to protect the innocent, but some ideas of some websites that you've used recently where with functionality in?
So a lot of the places that I like to use Nancy is for prototyping. It's something that's, like I said, it's easy to get something up and sort of started, and then down the road you can take the logic that you wrote and put it in an ASP.NET site. Something where you've got sort of the full full framework.
The full Monty.
Yeah.
There to take advantage of everything that's written in there.
Right.
So prototyping, does it ever make its way? Are there situations where it's just
Sure.
one and done, and that's going to stay there?
Sure, absolutely, you can do that. And there's not a whole lot built into Nancy, but there's a pretty good community around it. There's a lot of stuff available via NuGet, for instance, for different view engines, different IOC containers, different hosting platforms.
Accepted pretty well in the Microsoft community as a whole?
Yeah.
Does it fit into this Internet of Things concept as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So it runs on a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah. Which will someday power my refrigerator, by the way.
Right. Yeah. It runs on Mono. It runs on Nginx. It runs on IIS and Azure, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. Does Azure have a pre-built VM, not VM, but whatever you would use on Azure?
Website? I don't think so.
Okay.
You can get, for Visual Studio, you can get project templates.
Okay.
So file new Nancy project.
Mm-hmm.
The easiest way to do that is to go to the sidewaffle.org, the Sidewaffle extension.
Love the name. That's awesome. Yeah.
So that includes Nancy project templates, Nancy item templates, so class library for Nancy. It also includes things like Angular template.
Sure.
File new Angular controller.
Okay. Yep, I've seen that on there.
Yeah.
I've done some stuff with Azure in the past, and I'm just amazed at how many options you have in there, and they're growing all the time. So, some good. Have you done much with Azure?
We're in the process of sort of moving stuff to Azure.
Yeah. Experience so far?
Great.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And they keep rolling out new features, and they keep cutting the price.
I know. That's you can't complain about that. We have our friends at Amazon to thank for that. In a lot of cases, they keep and it's what's interesting. It's two gigantic companies throwing everything they've got at it, right?
Yeah.
And that's usually good for the consumer.
Right.
When that happens.
Absolutely. And obviously, it's not just small companies sort of exploring this, right? Netflix runs on Amazon.
Right.
I think all of Skype and Xbox Live run on Azure.
Right. Yeah. No, for sure. And actually, now that Skype's moved over to that infrastructure, it's running a lot better.
Right.
Than it ever has. So no, it's cool. It's one of those things. I'm an IT manager, so I don't dig into the code all the time. But it's one of those cool things I get to be kind of a part of, and you mess around with, and you get quick setups of stuff. I mean, they've really taken the complexity kind of out of that. What other questions do you get when at the end of these? Let me throw this out. What are the questions, and then, or what do you wish you'd had more time to say if you had more time?
One of the questions that's come up recently is that what's with everybody's talking about ASP.NET vNext now, right? The cloud optimized framework.
Right.
It's smaller, it's lighter weight. And so the question is, how does Nancy fit in with that?
Yeah.
And in honesty, the answer is no one's quite sure yet. Even within the Nancy community, there's sort of a discussion about what does vNext mean for Nancy? Because if ASP.NET is going to be lightweight and easier and easier to get started with, how do we differentiate?
Yeah, does it?
Right.
Does the need for it still exist?
Right.
Yeah. So some questions out there along those lines of the life and yeah. Okay.
And that's something that a lot of open source projects end up facing, at least if they're working in a sort of a space with.
And not everything is designed to last forever.
Right.
From that standpoint, and so if it gets replaced, or who knows from that standpoint. So, any thoughts on stuff you wish you would have covered that you didn't get a chance to? Is it 45 minutes? Are those the sessions are 45? They're pretty quick.
Yeah.
Did you get it all in?
I think I got it all in.
Joel, you don't mess around, man. You're like straight and to the point, and like we're gonna get this done, and so. Very cool. Let's dig a little bit into just kind of what from a technology standpoint. You gadget guy at all? Or you follow anything? What's going on with all this gadgetry?
I'm interested. I don't spend a lot of time doing.
Yeah. Why not?
Life.
Yeah, it is busy, right? It's hard to keep up with everything that's going on. from some of these smaller devices we talked about, Raspberry Pi, anything there's just been an explosion of these tiny things, little bits, little parts, whatever they're called, of these kind of things. Anything look interesting to you along those lines?
The little bits thing is interesting. I have kids, so might be something. They're still pretty young. But down the road, maybe. Yeah. Raspberry Pi. I mean. Yeah. The $35
and that keeps getting better too. The second version, I think, second version of that is out, and they're adding things to it and making it better, and that's pretty cool. That does allow you to get a lot of those components in the hands of people who may not have an opportunity to do. Schools, it's a great. You got young kids are going to be worried about the technology your kids are getting into school here, coming up very, very quickly. Has the home automation, there's kind of with Nest and some of those other companies, has that interested you at all? Or
I think the more that it can be sort of off-the-shelf sort of things, like Nest, right? You just buy it and
plug it in, change it a few times, and it does its thing.
And you don't have to think about it. Yeah. I think that's where the consumer market will go. Obviously, a lot of people that are at the conference, right, we're the people who want to tinker with stuff and mess with stuff, right? There's always the analogy about the car mechanics that have cars that don't run. Right? Yeah. And I can assure you that my wife feels that way about our computer.
I'm always afraid to go into home automation for just that reason. She seems to eat magnets that make everything electronic break. And it never fails. I'm going to get the call, hey, I can't get the garage door open. Because I installed some crazy, something I can do from my phone and, that crazy stuff. Yeah. No. It gets a little ugly.
If it can be automated in a way that you just sort of set it up and then forget about it, that's where it has to go.
It's never that way, though, right? No. It's never flawless. And the other day, she came up. She's like, my computer doesn't work anymore. And I'm like, what do you mean it doesn't work? It's broken. It doesn't work anymore. And I look over at the UPS, and somebody turned the UPS off. So, just turn that, turn that on. So that's always crazy. Anything you're looking forward to in the conference here that you saw that you're like, ooh, I can't wait to.
There's some stuff coming up about vNext. So. For .NET. And might check out some stuff on Angular. Haven't done a lot with it yet.
Okay.
Know that it's a up and coming platform.
Yeah. How you triggered this question, I forgot. How important is JavaScript in all the things you're doing? And
JavaScript. And other people have talked about this, but
question.
JavaScript. Java had the claim of the write once, run anywhere. Right. Which turned into write once, debug anywhere. And .NET is getting some of that as well with Xamarin. Write .NET code, run it on iPhones, Android.
Right.
Any device. JavaScript runs everywhere. It runs in every browser.
Yeah. Just as a recruiter, we recruit kids out of college. That's the one thing nobody's teaching right now.
Sure.
It's JavaScript. And I tell these kids all the time, if there's one thing you can learn on your own, start learning. Any advice to a student who's just starting to learn JavaScript? What they might do to get ahead on it?
My advice at this point would be that the trend right now is to just grab jQuery and write JavaScript using jQuery. And I think we're to a point now where you don't always need jQuery. When jQuery first came out, of course, the implementation of JavaScript across browsers was fragmented. At this point, it's really not. As long as we're talking about modern browsers.
Right.
The APIs are there pretty much across the board. So think about whether you need jQuery and learn just to write vanilla JavaScript.
Okay. Yeah, just straight up stuff. We'd love to see here at Gallup. We'd love to see more of that, and I hear that from a lot of organizations around. It's like just learn some JavaScript. because they're getting Java, they're getting some C#,
Yep.
they're getting in, but the universities are not necessarily covering that. It's something they're going to have to do on their own.
Well, and I mean, from a university standpoint, JavaScript has a sort of junior language reputation.
Maybe so.
You know,
maybe that's the problem.
It's a scripting language.
It's not an enterprise.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's the language of the internet.
Yeah. Well, and it's the language. I'm quickly becoming the language of the enterprise in a lot of ways.
Sure.
There's a lot of it. Yeah. There's a lot of it out there.
Server side, you can run it client side. You can.
Yeah, you can hack with it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just a lot of stuff you can do with it that where it becomes really important. So I'm about ready to go back to school and learn. No.
Yeah.
That'll never happen. Joel, thank you for taking a few minutes today to be a part of what we're doing here. And thanks for watching. All of Joel's information that he's going to share with you will be available right below the video window in the metadata descriptions down below. So you can take a peek at that down there. Thanks for watching.